Hi everyone and welcome back, and this week I am going to guide you through how I made these 3 gorgeous trays using epoxy resin and some really fun embellishments. So none of these are complicated to do, and I'm confident that you can copy these styles and recreate them yourselves at home. They make great gifts, or if you're an Etsy seller or sell at craft fairs, these sell fast. So let's get started. I have 3 new products to show you today before we start. The first one is this silicone mat that I got from Resiners. That's the same company that sell the airless machine that I really love. The one that gets all the micro bubbles out of silicone, which is perfect for making crystals or just to get a really glass-like finish on your resin projects. So these silicone mats I really like. They're really useful when you're working with resin, and I'll show you how I do that later in this video. Also from Resiners, I ordered these glass crystals and I'm going to use them today too. I really love the colours, so this should be fun to use. And lastly, I got a new heat gun from Let's Resin. It's a small compact version which I really prefer using. I find that the large ones are a little heavy and that the heat can sometimes burn the resin. So I've got 3 projects to show you today. The first one will be using a free-form mold that I've made, and let me explain quickly how I've done that. So all I've done is simply recycled the backing of an old picture frame, and I've used some of this aluminium tape, which is really sticky and really strong, and I've used this to line the outside of the board. Now this is just some sort of plywood, which I think is around 1/4 inch thick or 5 millimeters or so. And as you can see, I have used this previously just to test out an engraving on my X-Tool. Since I love recycling, I'm going to reuse this again. It's great for the planet and everyone should be recycling. Anyway, back to the project, and the most important part of making molds like this is to line the inside of the mold with regular packing tape so that the resin doesn't stick. So all I've done is covered the sticky part of the back of the aluminium tape with the backing tape and sealed it down properly, and then it's ready for me to pour in. So I'm going to make up some resin. In this case, I'm just using white tinted resin. I've put a little bit of pearl mica powder with just a little bit of white pigment paste, so I get something a little bit thick and opaque. Once that's had 3 minutes of mixing, it's time to pour. So there's nothing complicated here. This will be the base layer. So I'm going to need a relatively thin layer of epoxy, but I need it opaque enough so that it covers the plywood. This will need to harden just for a couple of hours, and then I'm going to add the embellishments. So what I'm looking for is that this layer of resin goes tacky, so almost hard but still a little tacky, so that I'm able to stick on my embellishments so that when I apply the next layer, they don't float up to the top. Well, that's the plan anyway. So far it's always worked for me to do it this way. And for the black tray, I'm going to use the same process as we've just done, but this time I'm going to need some more resin, and I've tinted it with black mica powder. And for a little bit of extra sparkle, and because, well, this might be used for every day of the year or springtime, I'm going to aim for, but it doesn't really matter. I've added some black glitter into it and mixed it all up, and then I can pour. And so once again, this will be the base layer, or if you like, layer 1. For this really gorgeous gold tray that I've actually got from IKEA, I've got some of this left over from the black tray, so I'm just going to pour it in. I actually think that the contrast of the black base with the gold can look pretty cool, so I'm going to have to think about what kind of embellishments I'm going to put on the top of this, but I've got some ideas already, so keep watching. And once again, just like the white tray, you're going to need to let this maybe a couple of hours. It depends how hot your room is. This is winter at the moment, so it might take about 3-4 hours, say. So I've done this in the morning. If I come back this afternoon, it will be tacky enough, and then I can get this second layer and the first layer done in one day. So I'm going to let all of these 3 trays dry, and I'll be back later. So it's been a couple of hours now, around 3 or 4, and ideally I would like to leave this until it's tacky, but actually this is still a little wet. But for the deeper pours, this is actually better. That means I can really embed all of the dried flowers and leaves into the resin, and that way when I add the top coat, they won't float up to the top. So this second layer, I suppose you'd call it, is quite important for this process, so I wouldn't skip this out. For most of these trays, I'm going to use dried flowers and then some pressed dried flowers, which I've bought. But for the dried flowers, just pick them up from my garden or just around town on my walks. And these are really easy to dry. All you need is some silica gel or some silica beads. Also from Amazon, and then you bury them in silica for a few days or until all the moisture is gone. And that's really important because if there's any moisture left in the flowers or leaves, the resin will turn it brown, and that's not a great look. I'm also going to use some of these glass beads from Resiners, and then just some other embellishments I have left over, and maybe some gold leaf. for the last tray, what I've decided to do was just go for a pared down, more elegant look, and I'm not going to add any flowers in at all. Instead, what I'm looking for is to use glitter, and if you've ever used glitter with resin, you know it can be a problem. Because sometimes when you add it into the resin, it just tends to float up to the top and then spread out and take over the whole piece. So over the years, I've found at least 2 better methods of using glitter in resin, and this is one of them. So the trick is to just let the resin get tacky as we've done here, and then you're going to use it as a glue and place the glitter on the top. Once the resin has set a little, it stops moving so that the glitter will stay in place wherever you put it and it won't spread out. Then all you need to do is leave this to completely cure, and when you add a clear top coat, you'll get a gorgeous glitter finish. And of course, the next step, once this is completely cured and I've left this overnight, is to add a clear top coat of resin just to seal everything down and give a lovely glossy finish. And I've got quite a few tricks to get the perfect finish, so keep watching. So these are my 5 tips for the perfect resin finish. Number 1. Always use a clean mixing cup to mix your resin up. Either use some rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol and just clean the cup out properly. Or you can use a new unused cup just for the top coats. If you have any debris or oils from pigments left in the cup, that will affect the resin and can cause blooms and foggy patches in the final finish. Number 2, don't overuse the heat gun or a torch lighter. Just very light touches just to get rid of large bubbles, and if you use quality resin like I do, micro bubbles will release whilst it's curing. So the overuse of heat gun or torch will also attract dust in the air that will just settle on the surface of your resin as it cures. And then you'll find yourself spending hours picking all those little bits of fluff out. Number 3, other causes of blooms and fog patches on the surface of resin is to make sure that your curing resin temperature in your room is constant. Any steep changes in temperature, say for example a warm room that gets cold, really cold overnight and then gets warmer again in the morning, etc. This will cause the resin to shrink and cause those little wrinkles and foggy patches on the surface. And another reason for wrinkling is number 4. Once you've finished pouring the top coat, don't move the piece until it's had its full harden. And the hardened time will depend on the brand of resin. And this will be indicated on the bottle. If you move your project before it's fully hardened, you're going to risk creating wrinkles on the surface because the resin hasn't yet fully hardened. And number 5, once it's fully hardened, it's not yet fully cured. So again, the amount of time needed for a full cure will depend on the brand of resin, and this will also be indicated on the instructions of your brand of resin. So every brand and type are different, but generally you can unmold your projects after they've fully hardened, but whilst it's still fully curing, which can take up to 3 to 4 weeks, just try to be as delicate as you can on the surface if you want to keep that nice flat glossy look. So for this one, after I've got rid of all the barriers and peeled off the silver tape, I'm just going to slice these sides down with a circular saw just to make them flush, and then just for a little change, I decided I was going to taper the corners off and then router the top and the bottom rims to remove all of the sharp edges of resin. And this will obviously need just one more final top coat of resin, and then I can add the hardware. But this is where I will have to leave this particular video. Unfortunately, as you can see from this lovely wrapping on my hand, I've pinched a nerve. It's super painful, and after many doctor and osteopaths visits, I am now on strict hand rest. Now, I'm well aware that there are worse things going on in the world, so I'm just going to keep it short and not complain too much, however painful my hand is, but I'm sure I did this while routering the edges of the resin tray. I mean, it's never happened before, so I'm really not sure what I did wrong, but I'm just going to have to split these videos into two and make this one a part one, and then hopefully finish the final resin layer and finishing touches on all the other projects in part two. Now, I know some of you don't like two-parters, but I got no choice, so I'm going to thank you in advance for your patience and your understanding. And just a shout out for these stones. I really love them, and I'm going to plan on using the rest to create a little mini geode painting, so hopefully soon. And then a little mention for this silicone mat. It's really useful, especially the ridges, which really help the dried resin to peel off easily, and then you can place your project on the top and it's level. Wait, as I said, worse things going on in life at the moment, so my handicap will hopefully be temporary, and I will see you all again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.